Okay, Chris, thanks for joining me today. Can you please just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the position of being a school athletic director?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Chris Hobbs. Big thanks to Dr. Baghurst for inviting me to come on and talk a little bit about the things that I am professionally passionate about. So I am the Director of Athletics at the Kings Academy in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I am about 20 years into my career as an educator. And the consistent theme throughout my entire career would be coaching and athletic administration. And so I'm raised in the home of a school administrator. And so I grew up at school, spent a lot of after hours at school as my dad was finishing up work in the office. My mom was a teacher. And so that quickly parlayed into hanging around practices as a little kid. And then that turned into being one of the middle school athletes. And the rest is kind of history from there. Just love teams, love coaches, love bus rides, love post-game meetings, like love it all, love everything that is the school athletic experience. And so had an opportunity to play three sports at a small private school in New Jersey. And then the particular sport that was a real passion for me was basketball. Played small college basketball at a small Division III college called Clark Summit University, which is up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And so had an incredible coach there that really had a big impact on my life. I actually just got off a Zoom call with another coach that I had in high school that had a huge impact on my life. He's an educator now in Ohio. And so that all being said, these coaches had such a big impact on my life, not only coaching the sport and teaching the sport, but also teaching me important life lessons. I am a Christ follower. At least I try to be. I try hard to be. And so they did a great job teaching me important principles about my faith through the athletic experience. And so all of that kind of put lightning in my veins. And it still hasn't really gone away 20 years later after college. So right after college, jumped right into teaching and coaching at a private school right outside of Washington, D.C. Had a great 7 years there. That's where all three of my kids were born. And then spent 10 years in the central New Jersey. So I went back to New Jersey. I'm a New Jersey native. Spent 10 years at a private school right outside New York City. Had an awesome experience there. And then have now spent 4 years here in the state of Florida at the Kings Academy. Fell butt backwards into being an AD, probably sooner than I should have while I was in the DC area. But it was awesome. So I love the impact that coaches can have on student athletes because it was just part of my life story. I think every single coach has an opportunity to do that same thing for student athletes. And so when I became an athletic director about 15 years ago, I had now had the opportunity to kind of help set that same structure up, help guide coaches, help bring some things I think a lot of coaches know subconsciously, bring it out to the conscious of their mind about impacting young people. And so that's kind of what I've fallen in love with gradually over the last 15 years to the point now where I do very little coaching, but administrating the department where that type of impact takes place is really, really awesome. It's life-giving. I really enjoy it. Along the way, got a bunch of degrees. Got a master's degree in sport coaching from the United States Sports Academy. What an awesome experience that was. I can't say enough about that place. And then got a doctorate, a doctor of education degree in educational leadership, mostly because I wanted to be a very trusted educational administrator in a school setting. My particular niche just happens to be athletic stuff. And so got some other certifications, won some awards, blah, blah, blah. But I would say that for every mountaintop experience, there has been months and years of just daily grind. We live in a day and age when we see everyone's mountaintop experiences on social media. And I think we lose track of how important the day-to-day grind just is. Just doing a good job every day, answering every email, returning every phone call, rewording every handbook, all that stuff. That's really where success is built. And so that's kind of brings me right to today, just doing day in and day out what I really am passionate and see a lot of purpose in.
So how many sports do you oversee and how many coaches total do you oversee?
So we have got, I oversee a high school and a middle school athletic department because we are a K-12 campus. So we've got about 1,600 kids on our campus. And sixth grade through senior and high school are eligible for interscholastic athletics, either on the middle school level, the junior varsity or varsity level. And so we've got 55 teams. I've got about 80 coaching positions that are filled by about 65 different individuals. And we've got 24 varsity sports We're uniquely blessed at Kings, uniquely positioned where we've got, depending on how you define the word elite, we've got elite facilities. And so that with that comes a lot of management, a lot of administration. We get to hire some pretty elite coaches. The most recent hiring would be Jared Saltalamacchia, who won a World Series with the Red Sox as their starting catcher. He's our head baseball coach. And so we've got Division I All-Americans that are coaches now and all this kind of stuff. So really high-level people that have had high-level experiences. So they don't really need me to tell them how to run practices and stuff like that. And so that would be kind of the framework at Kings. And so I've got, I think it's 6 directors that report to me, a director of aquatics, because we have an aquatic center, director of athletic operations, an assistant athletic director, director of sport medicine, director of sport performance. And these are all really highly qualified veterans in their fields. And so like I'm not by any means lording over them or anything like that. I'm really quite honestly just trying to play air traffic control and inspire them and communicate with them clearly along the way.
So the coaches that you have, you talked obviously some high profile names, and obviously you have great facilities and a setup there. Does this mean that some of the coaches aren't necessarily teachers and you have people coming in who are just coaches?
Yeah, I would say certainly more than 50% of the coaching positions that I referenced are not actually working on our campus. So there's great benefit in a school setting for your coaches to be on campus, faculty members, staff members. There's huge benefit, I think, to the culture of your school, to the student athletes' overall experience at the school. But for, I would say, almost every athletic department across the country on the high school level, that is just not the case. You know, you have to, because you have so many positions and so many opportunities, and NFHS and state associations sanction so many different sports. You really have to leave your walls to bring coaches in. And so that would be the case for us. Probably more than 50% don't work on our campus.
Then you yourself have had a lot of continuing education, right? You've gone through the whole gamut of education, earning your doctorate. When coaches are coming in, you mentioned some of the high profile names for their athletic success. What kind of training are they getting? And if they don't have enough, what do you do to support their continual professional development?
Yeah, yeah. I think coaching education is huge. Obviously, I got a master's degree in sport coaching, and loved every second of that. So I do think just because they were a high-profile athlete with a rich athletic experience, it does not necessarily translate into the fact that they will be a good coach. I would say for every high-profile athlete that we have hired, whether they had a high-profile collegiate experience or professional experience, I would say we turn away scores. Just the nature of South Florida, it just seems to be a landing place for former great athletes.
Mhm.
I would say there's scores that we turn away that clearly don't understand the art and the science of coaching, which I think is often the case. For example, I don't know Michael Jordan personally. I worshipped him as a young person, but I don't know him personally. But he, to his own testament, he would make a terrible coach. He just had some giftings and he had some bents to his personality that just made him an all-time great competitor. But he's the top 0.1%. And so he to his own reflection, I believe, if I've read, attests to the fact that he understands that no one's made like that, and it would drive him crazy that people aren't made like that. And so that goes all the way back to coach education. And so 3 things we talk about that would define coaching excellence for us in our athletic department would be, are you obsessively prepared? There's some great social science research out there on great coaching. And you'll see all sorts of stuff that these studies kind of present as like great coaching. But in my literature review for my dissertation, actually, there was 2 themes to great coaching in the research. One of the themes was obsessive preparation. Great coaches never take on an interaction with their student athletes, whether it's a pregame walkthrough or it's a random Saturday morning practice or it's getting ready for that huge Friday night game against your opponent, your big rival. They never interact with their student athletes in a group setting unprepared, obsessively prepared. And then the second thing that great coaches do, according to the research that I gathered, would be they teach their student athletes to respond positive to negative circumstances. And the number one way they do that is to demonstrate that.
Mm.
And so, there's a great clash right now, I think, in coaching philosophy methodology about the place of screaming and yelling and ranting and raving. And I think it's a really healthy debate because I think intensity comes naturally with athletics, but the urgency of the moment. But at the same point, the great coaches teach their student athletes to respond positive to negative circumstances. And then we add one more P, and this would be based upon my experience in 20 years of interscholastic athletics. Great coaches, coaching excellence is obsessive preparation, positive response to negative circumstances, and then parent communication. How great do coaches on the high school and the middle school level communicate with the parents, especially in a private school setting where the parents are paying for a particular experience? There is a customer service element that is very, very important. And so in my 20 years of doing it, those three Ps, if a coach has those three Ps, a coach is going to probably do a great job delivering the athletic experience to young people. And so, but that doesn't come, a lot of times that doesn't come natural. And so those are the three Ps that we try and train our coaches in.
Well, you touched on a couple things, and I want to ask two questions, and I'll start with the first one, which is the parents. What strategies have you put in place as an athletic director to not only help the parents as supporting their athletes, but also protect the coaches from the parents?
Yeah, that's really good. And so we run a little thing. It's probably none of these are the magic bullet. I would say that anyone that's in a position of leading athletic departments has to really, it's nuanced. And so it's going to take a variety of methods. There is no one magic method. Some of the stuff that we do that I think helps to create a culture where the coaches are trusted. We live in a culture nowadays where it's a mistrusting culture. It's a distrusting culture. The cancel culture, social media, being aware of every misstep of every important leader globally because of social media just creates distrust. And that filters all the way down to how parents view their coaches sometimes of their children. So one of the ways we try and nurture a culture of trust is I run a monthly feature on our athletic department website, tkalliance.net, called Coach Focus. And we just highlight our coaches, one of our varsity coaches every month throughout the entire school year. So 10 months, we'll highlight 10 different coaches. And it's everything from their coaching experiences to what they really love about coaching at Kings, to a positive memory of coaching at Kings, their favorite quote that they hope their student athletes would know them by, just to kind of to help people get to know the coaches a little bit, to help people, even if it's not their child's direct coach they're reading about. I think the transparency, our desire to try and get the coaches out on the forefront of the parents' minds begins to quietly nurture a culture of trust. Encouraging our coaches to communicate to our parents on non-game days is huge. Game days are full of emotion. And so parent-coach interactions on game days, particularly right after a game, can be 9 times out of 10, someone's going to say something they regret. The emotions are just too high. You're either way too high from winning or you're way too low from losing. And so we really try and discourage coach communication after games with parents. But we do encourage coaches, go communicate with parents on non-game days. A trick that my father did. So my father was an administrator, continues to be an administrator at a school, but he was also a basketball coach for a while. He was actually my high school basketball coach. He would go into the bleachers during warm-ups and shake parents' hands. Now, I don't know if that works at every school. In fact, I think there's a lot of schools that's probably not a great idea, but it's something. I stepped back from coaching varsity basketball this year, kind of concluded my 18 years as coaching varsity basketball. I kind of concluded that this year, but I hung on and coached JV basketball because I love coaching. I love the relationships. I love the game of basketball. And it was very easy to manage in light of all the years coaching varsity basketball. I would go to the bleachers and I'd shake the hands of the parents of my JV players because, again, they're the only people in the bleachers for a JV boys basketball game. There's no one there. It's not like I've got 500 fans watching us. And it ended up, I think, creating a culture of trust, where parents in a very healthy mindset, if they had a concern, they would come talk to me. And it was a very healthy, normal conversation because I think they trusted me. And obviously, I trust them. They're the parents of the players. And so those would just be some of the nuances that I think athletic administrators, athletic leaders need to think about. They need to think about, hey, how am I going to create a culture of trust with the parents?
Yeah, and one of the things I want to know from your perspective as an AD is look, if I'm a coach and maybe I'm trying to get better, or maybe I want to be a coach, what kind of advice from that top down approach of what you see? What advice would you give to coaches who are looking to get into coaching or looking to really build their resume and progress up,
Yeah.
get better, basically?
So at some point, I think if you really want to make it a huge part of your profession, meaning you want to be, let's say you're an educator and you'd like to get into coaching on the varsity level at your school, or you'd like to, be a club coach, and coach a sport on the club level. You like what goes along goes around that world and that atmosphere and those dynamics. I would say at some point you are going to have to get some formal education in coaching. And I'm not talking about visiting a Nike clinic on a weekend. I'm talking about pursuing and doing some research on what is a realistic degree or certification that would require a significant sacrifice of your time and maybe even a little bit of your money, because like real growth requires submission, and you have to submit yourself to some type of outside entity and experience. And so that's where, for me, at that point in my career, when I was probably 28 years old, when I decided to enter the United States Sports Academy for a master's degree in sport coaching, that was me saying, "Hey, listen, this is a big part of my career, and so if I want to really progress, I've got to make a huge sacrifice right now." And so for the next 13 months, man, I took it right in the face. I had little ones at home, yeah, we've all been there. I had toddlers at home. I had a wife that was kind of part-time stay at home. And so she had one foot in the working world. She had one foot in managing the house. None of us are sleeping. And on top of that, I'm trying to get a master's degree. But that all being said, it made a really loud statement to me and the people that I worked with, that I was going to be excellent in coaching. I was going to be trusted to be excellent in coaching. And so I would encourage everyone that's thinking about it, think long and hard. How will you submit yourself to a really, really significant educational experience that will help you put some stakes in the ground about the type of coach you want to be? And then after that, I think that's the huge chunk of the iceberg that floats under the water, that we need to spend more time under the water looking at the bottom of the iceberg, in today's day and age. But I would also say on the top of the iceberg, there's some incredible content that can be consumed on YouTube and Twitter, particularly. I had about a 2-year habit where every morning I would spend 10 minutes watching these YouTube videos from these like weird basketball analytic geeks that like hide in their basements and break down the nuances of Thursday night's Milwaukee Bucks versus Toronto Raptors game in the middle of February when no one cares, and these guys were just unbelievable minds. And so I spent about 2 years. I had subscriptions to all their channels. I would get updates when something new would post, and I would spend 10 minutes with a little notebook. I still have the book, and I would just take notes, and I would write X's and O's down. And that was probably a really intense 2 years of tactical growth for me as a coach. And so that would be whatever your sport is, you could take that, reframe it for your sport, take off and run it. If you're really looking to learn the X's and O's at a deep level, YouTube's an incredible resource. But I would encourage you to do it every single day for an extended period of time. That would be secondary to like some formal coach education program, much like that's why I'm so excited what's happening at Florida State right now. I just think it's cool. The reputation of Florida State perceives itself. And now that Florida State's really dipping its toe into kind of validating the importance of coach education, that's why I've been so curious to keep track of what you're doing on social media there, Tim.
Thanks. So last question for you. This is maybe a little bit harder one. I got to kind of poke the bear, so to speak. You mentioned as an athletic director that you have, the peaks and the troughs.
Yep.
And so I want to talk a little bit about the troughs, because we tend not to do that, right? We focus all on the wins and being successful. But you mentioned, being an athletic director or being a coach, a lot of it's a grind. You
Yep.
really got to push through and prepare and all that. But you've obviously had some really hard times in your career. What do you do in those situations to kind of dig your way back up? What strategies do you have to do that?
Yeah. That's a great question. I love this question. So I'm a little bit fascinated with this is going to sound weird, with the masochism of persistence. because to really experience significant peaks, you've got to persist through some really, really painful experiences. And so for me, over the years, here's what I've kind of learned to do. Number one, I've learned to kind of pause. Like when I'm just at my wit's end with something, either my heart's broken over something or my stress levels at an all-time high over something. It's just a bad day. And I would say for every good day I have, and this isn't to be negative, for every good day, like really good day, like Twitter worthy day, I probably have 5 bad days, so I want to remind everyone of that, that there is just a lot of bad days that go into having the good day. So for me, I pause, try and get away from it all for a little bit, not in an escape way, not in like a run away from it way, but like, hey, at the end of a brutal day, I need to pause right now. I need to get away from it, late at night, early in the morning. I am an early riser by force, by habit, not because I necessarily like it. Like I don't pop out of bed cheery, but I've developed the discipline to get out of bed early because it's quiet and I can function in a state of like pause and not in a state of hurry and rush. And so I would say in today's day and age where we're so fast paced, pausing is a huge deal because we do it so very rarely, especially when you're in a bad moment. I would find ways to systematically pause, like create some keystoning habits that when something bad happens, deal with it at the moment and then go find a way to pause for a second. And then when you're done with that pause, I would connect with people that are like-minded. They're like-minded with you on your good days. They're like-minded with you on your bad days. I've got quick dials that I can make of actually a lot of my college basketball teammates at a small little place. This is why the athletic experience is so cool. I played at a small college, probably played in front of an average of 250 to 300 fans a night. Man, that was some of the best experiences of my life because of the coach and how wise he was to use the athletic experience to impact us. And because of the like-minded teammates I played with, many of them now have their terminal degree. They are leading athletic departments. They are leading schools. They are leading nonprofit organizations. They're coaching on the collegiate level all around the country. And when I talk to them, it's like time has not passed. It's like we just saw each other in the locker room the other day. And I know they're wired like I am. And so talking to them really recharges me, especially in a moment when things aren't going well. So I would pause. I would connect with like-minded people. And then at some point, you got to take a deep breath. You got to clench your jaw and you got to get back to it. And it's easier to do that when you've paused and then connect with some like-minded people. And so that would be my encouragement, really, for anyone in any industry. I think that's probably a valuable 3-step process to keep showing back up when you're getting punched in the face day in and day out.
That's great. Great advice. And I really appreciate it. One of the things that I found very useful is just to recognize a lot of times I tell myself that in 2 weeks time, whatever situation I'm going through right now won't even be relevant.
Yeah, that's very true.
I've just got to kind of push my way through this, understanding it's difficult right now. And in a couple of weeks time, I'll look back and go, why was I so stressed and upset or worried about this situation? So Chris, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me. If anybody wants to kind of connect with you, stay in touch, how do they do that?
So Twitter is just an incredible connection tool. So my Twitter handle is at Dr._Chris Hobbs. So at Dr._Chris Hobbs. I love connecting with people out there. That's how I connected with you, Tim. And that's how I maintain some connections with some people kind of nationally and globally that helps to recharge me and inspire me and pique my curiosity. So that's probably the best way for people to reach out to me.
Okay, Chris, thanks so much for joining me.
Yep, my pleasure, Tim. Thank you for having me.